In Neil Simon's romantic comedy The Goodbye Girl, Elliot sublets an apartment from Tony, but Tony doesn't mention that his ex-girlfriend Paula and her preteen daughter Lucy still live there. Elliot walks in on them and chaos reigns. Spoiler alert, a lot of laughs later, everyone lives happily ever after. But the story's premise confuses some people. If Paula and Lucy still live in the apartment, how can Elliot force his way in? And how can he threaten to make them leave? The answer is that he is the assignee in this story. He has the right to the apartment and the obligation to pay rent. To understand how this works, we turn to the 1964 decision of Ernst versus Conditt. In June of 1960, Walter and Emily Ernst, whom we'll call the landlords, leased land they owned in Davidson County, Tennessee, to Frank Rogers for a term of 1 year and 7 days. Rogers built a go-kart track on the property. Later that month, Rogers discussed selling the go-kart business to A.K. Conditt. Eventually, everybody came to an understanding. Rogers and the landlords signed an extension of the lease for an additional year, which totaled a little more than 2 years. The extension also allowed Rogers to sublet the premises to Conditt, but Rogers would remain liable to the landlords for the lease obligations. Rogers also signed an agreement subletting the premises to Conditt. Conditt operated the go-kart track from August to November. He paid 3 months' rent to the landlords, then stopped paying rent. When the landlords asked about the past due rent, he responded that he wasn't obligated to pay them. Conditt kept possession of the premises for the rest of the lease term, but paid rent only once more. Near the end of the lease term, the landlords demanded that Conditt pay the past due rent and prepare to surrender the property when the lease expired. When Conditt didn't respond, the landlord sued him in the Davidson County Chancery Court. Conditt responded that he wasn't liable to the landlords because he wasn't a party to the lease between them and Rogers. After a trial, the chancellor entered a decree in favor of the landlords. Conditt appealed to the Tennessee Court of Appeals.